welcome to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are, guys. We're back together for a brass tacks conversation, which it always is interesting and definitely fun. It really, really is. Coriander's with me, of course, Killian, and
Hello.
Eric from Hey Internet Eric here.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, man, it's good to have you back. And let's see what we got going on here, guys. We're talking about sequels that we feel outshined the original. And when we kind of, Eric, you and I, we talked a little bit about this a couple times offline, and we kind of had to put some parameters on this because it's an interesting conversation, to say the least. But I'm really interested to see how this conversation is going to go, because when you talk about sequels, I think sometimes people there's a negative stigma around sequels, right? Yeah. But I think obviously we feel a little bit more open-minded about it, and I think after this conversation, hopefully other people will kind of have that feeling too. Real quick, before we get into our list, just real quick, give me a sense of what comes to mind when you think sequel, as far as, do you get excited about sequels? Do you think sequels are overdone, or do you just kind of take them as they come? I'll start with you, Coriander, and then we'll go to Kill, and then Eric.
I definitely take them as they come.
Okay.
I mean, some you definitely get excited for. Others you're probably like, why?
Good point.
But yeah, so yeah.
Okay. All right. How about you, Kill?
I'm kind of the same way. I'll take it as it comes, because sometimes I'm pleasantly surprised when they go back to like a movie that I liked, or I'm like, oh wow, they're doing a sequel to that, or oh, they're doing a sequel to this movie 30 years later and it's better than the original. But sometimes, just like Coriander said, it's just like, why are you making us more of this? It was bad from the start. Why are we going back to this well?
Ooh, yeah. That's a good point. All right. How about you, Eric?
I'm about 50-50. It all depends, are we on like part 8? You know what I mean? And do we really need 8 movies in a franchise? And that's, nothing against, Jason here, but do we really need 8 in a franchise? Or let's just say the last one was really, really good, and you could tell there's more story to tell. So that will get me pumped up. So it's 50-50 for me. I can be pumped up, but then I can just be like, I don't really care. I'll wait for video type of thing. I know I'll watch it, but it'll be a while type of thing.
Yeah, that's a good point, man, because I'm kind of like that too. It really depends on what it is. If it's a long-standing franchise, there's only a couple that, really give me that excitement, when they continue to go into sequels. And then there's others that are just like, okay, guys, let's just hang it up for a while, and then maybe there'll be some fresher ideas. But also, kind of like what Kill was saying, every once in a while we have a sequel that is years and even a couple decades, in between the original. And more often than not, I get nervous, but we've had a couple of situations where it really worked out well. I'm looking at you, Blade Runner, and obviously Top Gun. So those are movies that really have proven that even with the passage of a lot of time, they can still do some really cool things.
And even though it's not on my list, a big one for me was Terminator Dark Fate. I was not interested in that one at all. And I think that one is severely underrated.
Agreed. We agree with you on that. I'll never forget when we did that episode, man. I thought people were going to be coming after us with pitchforks, because like all 3 of us were like on board with it. I mean, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't, they had some missed opportunities here and there, but overall it wasn't a bad movie, and it definitely wasn't a bad Terminator movie. And I remember the live chat, you could tell that some people were tiptoeing around it. But I do think we opened up a few eyes in that episode, because I think there is a lot of good stuff in Dark Fate. Good point, man. All right, well, we're gonna do this thing round robin as we always do, by giving our picks for sequels that we feel outshine the original, and we'll talk a little bit about why. Coriander, I'll have you go first, and then Kill, and then Eric, and then me. So, Coriander, what is your first pick for a sequel that you say is better than the original?
Well, in my opinion, it's my opinion, okay? And everyone has their own opinion, so it's not like this is say all, say all. But I enjoy Evil Dead 2 versus the original.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, it had more action. I like how, Ash arrives with his girlfriend instead of a group of friends. I like, it's just the special effects, they're better. The camera work, it's great. It's more polished. It's just a more cleaner, they have more money. And yeah, I really enjoy the sequel.
Very, very cool, man. Yeah, I mean, Bruce Campbell, man, that was kind of his coming out party to me. That's when, he really solidified himself, definitely as Ash. Good one.
Great choice.
Yeah, it is. Okay, Kill. What do we got for your first pick? I was so curious to see what you were going to say, bro. Well, I'm telling you.
Well, look, let me just say one thing. For me, the way I mold this over in my mind was when you said sequel, I'm thinking the second movie.
Yes.
Same.
Yes. Good point. Good point.
Like
That's
Dark Fate. I like Dark Fate, but it's not the second movie. So that was one of the parameters I put here.
Yep, same here.
Well, my first pick comes from a time when there weren't planned universes. Oh, we're gonna do 5 movies. We're gonna do all of these movies, and you guys are just gonna like it. It was just, hey, we're gonna do a movie, and if it does well, we might come back to that well. And I'm glad they did, because my first choice is Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
There it is.
And look.
There it is.
Look. I grew up with this franchise of movies, and Star Trek II to this day is probably the best Star Trek movie ever. And the reason I say that is not only do you have the OG cast, I mean, look at them, you have the OG cast, but you had stakes. You had actual stakes of bonds of friendship, blood feud enemies that came back. I mean, thank you,
my boy.
My boy.
Look at him.
Look. Do you want to mess with that man?
Oh,
look. I'm sorry.
Yes.
The ladies love him. Men want to be him. You don't want to mess with Khan,
right?
And the last thing I'll say is Khan was a character that appeared in 2 episodes of the original run of Star Trek. Okay, way back in the day. But that's how much that character left their fingerprints on, this cast and this franchise. So this movie, once again, like I said, this wasn't them planning universes. We're gonna do all these movies. They were kind of riding by the seat of their pants. Like, hey, we got this story to bring this character back, and it was amazing. So, Wrath of Khan.
Can I just jump in, man? Because
What?
I love this movie, man. This was one that I was thinking too, but it's all gravy. But let me ask this, Coriander and Eric, have you guys seen Star Trek 2?
The only Star Trek movies I've seen was the reboot and its sequel with its Khan.
Okay.
But I've never seen anything, and I've seen like 1 or 2 of the Picard movies, but I've never seen any of the original run.
Okay.
Yeah, and can I just say the only one I saw, it was in the theater, but it was the one where they were saving that whale. It was the humpback whale.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah.
That was a good one.
It was.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
But
let me
that's
just
the
say,
only one I've seen ever.
Yeah. Let me just say this, and Kill, you did all right, because we kept it on the surface. Seriously, guys, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. You don't even have to be a sci-fi fan to absolutely love this movie.
That's what I've heard.
In my humble opinion, we saw this movie, and I'm not trying to take your thunder,
no,
but
do it.
I love this movie. I want to do a video on this movie alone.
Yes.
We saw this movie when we were little kids. I still remember that. This is decades ago, with our parents. This movie, it just gets you, and it's such a great example of taking a sci-fi concept and really bringing it down to a relatable level with characters and character building. Like, and I don't even want to say anymore because you guys haven't seen it, but it is such a great movie, and you basically have this concept of good versus evil, and it's done in such an interesting way. And we have another pick coming on down the road that does it in a different way,
Okay.
and it's very interesting. But anyways, great pick, man. I love this movie, and you're all right. Okay. All right. Eric, what do we got for your pick?
Well, see, that one thing I want to jump on that a little bit is I'm not a Star Trek fan. I got nothing against it. It's just I've never gotten into it. You know what I mean? I've never had the opportunity other than the reboots.
Right.
But everyone talks about how good Wrath of Khan is. You know what I mean? They say you don't have to be a Star Trek fan.
That's right.
To enjoy Wrath of Khan.
That's right.
And it's always on like a not a best sequels that outdo the original like we're doing, but it's always on like a top 10 list of best sequels in general. And that's always just got me interested. And they always say, of the Star Trek films, the better ones are like the even numbered ones, and they always say number 2 is the best.
Yes, totally agreed. And also just to say that if you're interested in this movie, I would definitely recommend it. If you have a lot of time, which I know none of us have a lot of time, but check out some of the old TV show episodes. Just watch just a couple of them. Or if you want to prep for this movie, you could watch Space Seed, which is where Khan first appeared.
Do you have to see those?
You don't have to, not at all. But I will say this, and Kill knows what I'm about to say. In this movie, and again, we grew up on this. We used to watch it at home. We used to watch it at my grandmother's house. So we were invested in these characters. These characters are like family to us. Okay. And in this movie, there are things that happen that it'll work for anyone. But if you know these characters, if you've spent some time with them, the weight of it hits so much harder, and again, it's just a fantastic movie. Look, man, you know how I get with movies.
Oh no, he's saying yes. It's that type of movie. Shit.
Okay, yeah, of course I did. I still do. Okay, it's a great movie. Okay, let's just throw it out there. But no, seriously, I would totally recommend it, Eric. I mean, seriously. And if you ever do, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right, man.
We should all do a video because it'd be my first time and Eric's first time.
Well, maybe we will.
We should
I'm up for that.
Okay, well, maybe we'll do that.
Okay.
All right, once we're done this, we'll talk about maybe how we can set that up. That's a good idea, man. All right. Okay, Eric. So what do you got for your pick?
Okay. Now, this has been an ongoing theme with our brass tacks when we're not talking about a character, when we're doing rankings, how this was so hard. Everyone always says this was so hard. This one was actually pretty easy for me. You know what I mean? When I said we were going to do 2, I picked my top 2. And the reason why I like this one better is you take the original and you up the ante. And you take some characters and you up the ante. And then you just make it bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, the original was such a hit, successful horror movie, great characters, and then you give it to a man who knows how to mix horror, sci-fi, and action. I picked James Cameron's Aliens.
It is
nice.
And the reason why is, like I said, with the characters. Now, Ripley was already great, and her crew was fantastic. But how do you up the ante? You throw her with a bunch of Marines. Every single Marine here was memorable. You had, Hudson, who was, he thought he was a badass, but he was really a scaredy cat, and that's what made him likable. You had Michael Biehn, who was Kyle Reese, just in outer space. Apone was a badass. Vasquez was a badass, and she was so cool. She was there for the ladies to look up to, and the guys to be afraid of. You know what I mean? And Drake, all these people. Then you took Ripley, and she was already take no prisoners in Alien. Well, now, and especially if you have the director's cut, there's so much more to her. She has lost her daughter, so now when she has to take care of Newt, you have that added to it. Her relationship with Hicks is so good. The chemistry between her and Michael Biehn is so fantastic. I forgot to mention how great Bishop is in this. The trust issues between her and Bishop because of what happened in the first movie. And then you have James Cameron behind the camera who just knows what to do. A lot of people say he's hard to work with that. Well, some directors just have visions and they're sticklers for what they want.
Right.
And he took the fear element of part 1 and he adds that to the hive because you can't fucking see them, in camouflage and stuff like that. And then what does he do? Instead of 1, you have hundreds. And then you have the action with the firefight, and everything is great. And then at the end, you have that big alien queen. And that's another way how you improve on the original is you take the one monster and you just inject it with some steroids, and then that's what you have. And I still think the alien queen is literally like one of movies' coolest looking monsters of all time. And just, all the stuff that went in between just making the film. Sigourney Weaver got nominated for an Academy Award for her role, and I think it's just so fantastic. It's a good way to take a horror film and make it into a fantastic action film with part 2.
Agreed. Yes, absolutely. I love Aliens. There's no doubt about it.
Me too.
Yes. Okay, so you're right. In a way, this wasn't difficult, but in a way, it was a little challenging for me because, of course, I took you guys' picks first. And just to say, there were a couple picks that were also in my mind as well. But this movie I'm going to talk about, it took the elements of the first movie, kind of like what you were saying, Eric. It amped it up, and it went in a very different direction. It is probably best known as one of the greatest action movies of all time. It is such a frenetic pace. It's grimy, it's dirty, it's organic. And when you have an action movie, you have to have a great hero. You have to have that hero that you want to follow. This is one of the greatest heroes of all time. We've talked about it on the channel, and I hope that we get a chance to talk about it again. One of the greatest post-apocalyptic heroes of all time. I'm talking about my man, Mad Max.
The Road
Warrior.
Yeah, you did.
Nice.
Yes, you did. Listen, guys. I mean, look. And Kill knows this. I mean, we grew up on Mad Max, okay? you know? I mean, we saw Thunderdome in the theater, okay? Listen.
Nice.
This is a movie to this day, and again, it's my opinion. I really believe it's still one of the greatest action films of all time. It's amazing what they were able to do in 1981, what George Miller was able to do in 1981. So many huge death-defying stunts that were done by real people that got injured like really bad because they wanted to make this movie look a certain way, and they didn't have a lot of money. All the characters in this movie are colorful, memorable, and it's all very lean. You know, you basically have like a chase that happens. That's basically what's going on after, you get situated with the characters. But the way that they kind of made Max this mythic hero, this mythic character, this is the movie where it happens. This is the movie where it happens. And as a kid, especially when I saw this, it was just kind of like, wow, it just seemed bigger than reality. I love this movie so much to this day. It's just, me and Kill, we've said this many times, there's no perfect movies, but this is a perfect movie. There's a couple of movies that we're mentioning today that is basically perfect to me. And this is one of them. So I had to have Mad Max. Mad Max 2, as it was known at first. And then the Road Warrior over here, because they got all confused with the titles, but that's another story. Check out our video on the Road Warrior if you want more details on that. But love this movie, so that's my pick.
Road Warrior sounds cooler anyways.
Doesn't it though? Like when I was a kid and I heard the name of the movie, I was like, ooh, I mean, there's something to be said for titles of movies, man. Seriously.
Well, you know me, I was a wrestling kid and I loved the Road Warriors, and when I knew that they took their name from a movie, I had to go see it, and I loved it ever since I was a kid.
Right? Oh, it's such a good movie, man. I love it. All right. So Coriander, we've got one more pick apiece. So what do you have for your final pick?
Okay, so I love, this trilogy. The third movie is it's not the best. And I love the first. I'm not saying that I don't, but I just love Omen 2. Yeah. That is my choice there. Yeah. I love that this is 7 years later. I love when he begins to realize his true destiny, and that he's going to become the Antichrist. The relationship, you can see that the relationship between him and his cousin, they're like brothers. Like they said, these kids grew up together. The aunt, the uncle, it seems more of a family dynamic than in the first. You can see what this kid, what he's put through and what he does, the shit that he does once he realizes, what he becomes, what he's going to become. And when he sees that birthmark, the reaction, it's like one of my favorite scenes. And there's way more killings in this movie, way more. And it's just an awesome sequel. And I love this movie. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
I could go on and on, but I'm not going to.
Well, it is so good, man. And when we talked about it, we had a blast on that discussion. And it is such a good movie. And people usually think about the first movie because it is a classic. It absolutely is. But this movie really took things in an interesting direction. And for those young actors, like you said, they were cousins, and you really felt the relationship. So it wasn't just that Damien was just this asshole kid, because he wasn't. He didn't realize his destiny, and then he struggled with it. And of course, I think this was the peak of the franchise, where the deaths that were happening were like, one thing after dominoes, you know what I'm saying? And who knows, that might reference something else we'll talk about soon. But this movie is fantastic. I think it's a great pick, Coriander. Good one. Yeah. All right, Kill. So what do you have for your last pick?
Okay, so for my last pick, I have a little independent film. It's a crime drama, and it's called The Dark Knight.
I'm like, what?
That's an indie film, right? Yeah.
Some of that was truthful. It is a crime drama.
Yes.
So,
good choice.
Man.
So look, I'm a huge Batman fan. He's my favorite superhero, just because he's just a dude. He's just a dude in a suit. With supreme intellect, martial arts skills. He knows everything. But he's just a man. And what Christopher Nolan was able to do with his trilogy was amazing. Batman Begins was amazing. But for him to come back and not only have the cast that he had with Heath Ledger, rest in peace, and his great performance, and just raising the stakes so much. We all love Batman Begins. He could have just rested on his laurels, but he pushed the envelope and made a damn near 3-hour crime drama. That feels, if you watch that movie, it feels like two separate movies. It really does. But just, this movie just really, I think, showed to the world what a comic book movie could be, with a certain director that's visionary, maybe even taking it into a more realistic tone. So this was the easy pick for me, because when we were tasked with, thinking of sequels that outdid the first one, this was the first thing that came to my mind. And, the sad thing is, as more and more time starts to, pass, people forget, how good this trilogy was. I don't hear people talking about it as much, right?
Right.
Everyone's talking about, the Infinity Stones and Avengers, and Ben Affleck is Batman, whatever, yada yada. But no, this movie was amazing. If you guys have not seen it in a while, turn it on. Sit down for almost 3 hours, and then just enjoy.
And Heath Ledger as the Joker, I mean, he was like one of my favorite Jokers. So,
magical. I mean, and you're right, Kill. When these movies were out, that was a special time, man. That was a special time, man. I'll never forget just the feeling and the excitement around this trilogy, and especially when this movie came out, because we didn't know for sure what was going to happen after Batman Begins. You know what I'm saying? We didn't know if that was going to do well enough for anything else to happen, and we sure as hell didn't know what we're going to get in this movie. It was just amazing. I'll never forget seeing it in the theater.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I saw it in theater twice, and this was an honorable mention for me, and it's because of this movie. I Heath Ledger as a Joker, what the 10 Things I Hate About You guy, Knight's Tale. I didn't give two shits about him, but I watched this movie and I 100% had to eat crow. You know what I mean?
A lot of people did.
No pun intended. He killed it. He was fantastic. This isn't the teen rom-com guy, and it's because of him. I always give an actor the chance to prove it, no matter what. Now, Ben Affleck as Batman? No, wait, nope. Heath Ledger, gave him a chance, and Ben Affleck was good too. So it's because of this movie. It doesn't matter how weird the casting seems. I have to wait and see because I don't want to eat crow again. You know what I mean?
Right. So in other words, if I star in a movie as Batman, you're going to give me a chance.
I will give you a chance.
So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah!
Aww.
I'll give you one chance. I'll give you one chance.
Just think they'd have to just spray on the paint like for the bodysuit. You already got the muscles.
All right. So you guys are all right. Okay. So Eric,
I got to follow that up, right? Man? Okay.
Right.
God. All right. Like I said, sometimes a sequel can up the ante, but also it can continue the story. And when this first one came out, there was so much more to tell. And then when this one came out, it's still one of my favorite movies of all time. I think it really surpasses the original, and that's not to knock the original. I picked The Empire Strikes Back.
There it is.
And this was a sequel when it first came out. Now it's part 5 of 200 extended universes or whatever, but it counts. We get so much more in this. We have better battles, in my opinion. I love the Hoth battle. I love how we get more Darth Vader. You know what I mean? He isn't just kind of, a thug who shows up, does his business, and then disappears. We get so much more from him. We get, that epic scene that you got right there on the screen. At the time, you didn't know. Like my daughter, she's 10. She now knows because it's everywhere. But our generation seen it for the first time when he reveals to Luke that he's his father. The guy that killed all the Jedi is your dad. That's epic stuff. It introduces, my personal favorite Star Wars character of all time, Lando. The coolest guy in the galaxy, in my opinion. Great character. And, sometimes you need a story where the bad guys win. You know what I mean? And that's what happens in here. Han's kidnapped. Luke is missing a hand. The Empire won. It introduced Yoda, who is one of my favorite. I hate to call him a Muppet because he technically isn't, right? But one of the best characters in from my childhood. Frank Oz was amazing.
Absolutely.
And where else can you say other than a few other things where there was great chemistry between an actor and a puppet? You know what I mean? Because Frank Oz was so good, he literally brought Yoda to life, and that's why he was so good. But like I said, sometimes you need that dark ending. And again, what does a sequel do? Or what does a movie do? It makes you want to see where the story's going to go. And that was great. The love story starts with Han and Leia, and you wonder where that's going to end up, especially when he's taken away. So I had to go with Empire.
Yeah, man. That was definitely, that was on my list. I was like, that was an easy one, man. I absolutely love The Empire Strikes Back as well. It's still, to me, it's the best Star Wars movie. It's like just that damn good. And credit to George Lucas, man.
Yep.
Credit to George Lucas. Well, for my final pick, now I'm going to be honest. I had a couple of movies, and I had honorable mentions. You guys had named a couple that were on my list too. And I kept thinking about some other movies, and I centered on this one because, first of all, it's a franchise that I absolutely love. And I think that the whole franchise is really good. so that makes it even more challenging. But I always have loved this part 2 so much. I'll never forget when I first saw it, and it really ups the ante, but it also takes the story in an interesting way. It's a very rewatchable entry in this franchise, and I went with Final Destination 2.
Ooh, good choice.
And look, let me just say something to you. When you think of Final Destination, this is what people usually think of.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
If I had just put that image up first, people would have been like, "Yep, okay, I know what you're talking about." You know,
Mhm.
and I mean, it literally gave people paranoia and fear on highways, for all these years, and it's no different for me either. Anytime I'm behind a big truck or a log truck or a truck with stuff that's kind of shaking around,
Those giant big rigs that have tons and tons of cars on them. I always
Yes.
move. Oh, okay, slower traffic to the right. That I don't trust that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this movie, it took the concepts from the first one and it really made it fun, but still horrific for a horror movie. You had returning characters. Of course, you had Ali Lauder as Clear, who I think she was given a hell of a lot more to do in this movie, even though she was kind of like the torch passer, to the new group. Interesting characters. The death scenes were fantastic. I mean, to this day, watching this movie, there are death scenes that really make you say, "Oh my God!" and you're sitting on the edge of your seat. I don't want to go to the dentist anymore. I don't want to do anything. But seriously, this movie is just a fun one. We've talked about the Final Destination franchise and we ranked it as well. And of course, I had to put this as number 1 in a franchise that I absolutely love. But it has so many great moments, great characters, great death scenes. And I really think this was the springboard for the franchise. This is what really put it up there. And it was at a time when horror was still searching for an identity. This was all in the early 2000s. And, we had gotten past, the phase of Scream kind of reinvigorating horror, and we needed new things. So we had things like, Saw and things like Final Destination. And I think that they did a great job as far as keeping horror at a certain level and in the public eye. So Final Destination is my last pick. But I'm gonna tell you what, all of you guys had great picks. And man, the more I thought about all the things we talked about, it just made me realize how many great sequels that there are. And there's tons more. I mean, I literally have 4 other honorable mentions other than what you guys said. So I think it's really, really cool, man. It is really, really cool. But anyways, for you guys watching the video, please let us know what are some of your favorite sequels that you think outshined the original. We'd love to hear about it. Also, definitely check out Eric's channel. I have his link to his channel in the description. Go over to his channel, subscribe and support to him because he is amazing. Please give the video a like. It helps to support the channel. We'd appreciate it. And if you're not subscribed to us, do that as well. So anyways, we'll talk to you later. If you're watching this, if you're listening to this, you are the Night Watch. Peace out.
Cheers.
Peace.
Church.